The first thing I registered was the sound, a steady metronomic beep. Beep, beep. It was the only sound that made sense in the suffocating fog. Then the smell hit me, a sharp chemical sting of antiseptic that failed to cover the cold metallic scent underneath. Fluorescent lights hummed aggressively overhead, a painful, blinding glare that assaulted my one working eye. The other was swollen, completely shut. I was Eliza, 29 years old, and I was in a hospital. Every part of me was in agony. My head throbbed with a dull, explosive pulse. My ribs felt like shattered glass, each shallow breath a fresh fire searing my chest. I lay there trapped in that hazy, painful clarity, and I knew one thing for certain. I knew my husband Liam's lie, the lie he was currently constructing, was about to be exposed. He was 31 years old, and his carefully built world was about to shatter. What the Dr. Reed said next saved my life. I am still shaking as I tell you this story even 2 years later. The memories of what he did, the pain, the absolute terror I lived with every single day, it still haunts me. But I need to share this. I need you to hear what happened, because maybe, just maybe, my story will help someone else escape the hell I was living in. Before I tell you how Dr. Reed's words changed everything, I need you to understand that I am not alone anymore. For 3 years, being alone was my entire existence. He tried to make me alone. Liam, my 31-year-old husband, had systematically, surgically removed everything from my life that was not him. My friends, who he called bad influences. My family, who he called meddling. My career, which he called too stressful for me to handle. He took every support beam until the only thing left holding me up was him, the very person crushing me. He built an invisible cage around me. The bars were made of his captivating charm, the promises of protection, the way he could light up a room and make me feel like the only woman in it. But the locks were forged from his terrifying threats, the coldness in his eyes, the hissed whispers in my ear that promised consequences I could not bear. He wanted to erase me, to make me so small that I would forget I ever existed without him. But he could not take my voice, not forever. I remember standing at our living room window just months ago. It was a Saturday in July, suffocatingly hot. I watched the neighbors across the street, the Fullers, laughing in their yard. They were gathered for a barbecue, gathered around a smoking grill. I could hear the tinny sound of music from a portable speaker and the bright, easy sound of their laughter carrying across the lawn. It sounded so impossibly normal, so light. I just stood there, my hand pressed against the cool glass, a prisoner looking out at the free world. I was a ghost in my own home, trapped behind that window, screaming while making no sound, watching a life I was no longer part of. Liam was upstairs, and the simple sound of their joy felt like a betrayal, a dangerous risk I was taking just by listening. To understand how I ended up in that hospital bed, you need to go back. You need to see the beginning. You need to understand that I was not always this broken, scared woman lying here painted in purple and blue bruises that mapped 3 years of his rage. There was a time when I smiled, a full, genuine smile that reached my eyes. A time when I laughed loud and without fear. A time when I actually foolishly believed in love. God, I was so naive, so stupid, so blind. It was 6 years ago. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, a brand new third-grade teacher. I was overflowing with that naive, incandescent energy you only have in your early 20s. I had lesson plans color-coded for the entire semester. I had dreams of building a classroom library from scratch and starting a school garden project. I was hopeful, I was driven, and I was, as Liam would later prove, incredibly gullible. I met him at my friend Jessica's wedding. He was Liam Walker. He was 25 years old and the best man. Charming is the word everyone used, but charming is too small, too common for what he was. Liam was radiant. He was magnetic. He had this smile that didn't just crinkle his eyes, it seemed to physically light up the room, pulling everyone into his orbit. He was handsome, of course, in that effortless, classic way, but it was his attention that was the real weapon. He zeroed in on me during the reception, and when he looked at me, I felt it. It was like the loud music, the clinking glasses, and the chatter of 200 guests just faded into a dull hum. I felt like I was the only person in the world. He listened to me. I mean, he really listened. He asked questions about my teaching, my hometown, my stupid cat. He laughed at the right moments, his eyes locked on mine. I felt seen. I felt brilliant. I felt for the first time in my life completely and utterly captivated. The love bombing, as my therapist Dr. Aris would later call it, started immediately. On our second date, he showed up with a bouquet of stargazer lilies. Not roses, lilies. I had mentioned them once in passing at the wedding, talking about my grandmother's garden. He remembered. He remembered every tiny, insignificant detail I told him about myself. He sent "Good morning, beautiful" texts every single day, without fail, usually before my alarm even went off. He told me how lucky he was to have found me, how I was so different from other women, so real, so smart. It was intoxicating. It was a deluge of affection, and I drank all of it gratefully. The most insidious part? He seemed to champion my passion. Back then, my career was my life. I wasn't just a teacher, I was a teacher. I would spend hours talking, just rambling excitedly about my students, about a new project I was designing to teach fractions using pizza boxes, about my goal to get every kid in my class reading above grade level by Christmas. I was full of ideas, full of energy. Liam would sit across from me at dinner, his chin resting in his hand, watching me with that intense, adoring gaze. He never interrupted. He never looked bored. When I would finally pause, flushed and embarrassed for talking so much, he would just smile. He would reach across the table and take my hand. "It's amazing that you have your own passion, Eliza," he would say, his voice low and sincere. "I love that about you. Seriously, your drive is incredible." He didn't just tolerate my ambition, he celebrated it. He made me feel like my passion for my work made me more desirable, not less. He made me feel seen. It was the most clever lie of all. And everyone else saw it too. Everyone told me I had found the perfect man. My friends, even my best friend Chloe, who was usually so skeptical, were jealous. "Eliza, he's perfect. He actually listens to you. Don't you screw this up," she told me. My mother, who had criticized every boyfriend I had ever had, absolutely adored him. She was already talking about grandchildren after only 6 months, charmed by his perfect manners and the way he always brought her flowers. But the final seal of approval came from my father. My dad is a quiet man, a man of few words where a firm handshake means more than 1,000 compliments. After about a year of dating, Liam came over for dinner. As he was leaving, my father stopped him at the door. He put his hand on Liam's shoulder, looked him square in the eyes, and said the most I had heard him say about any man I had dated. "You take care of my daughter, son." It was a command, a transfer of trust. I watched from the hallway, my heart swelling so much I thought it might burst. Liam didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He met my father's gaze, his own expression one of absolute sincerity. He promised he would. He looked my father right in the eye and promised. We got married 2 years after we met on a bright, crisp October day. The wedding was everything I had ever dreamed of, a small, intimate ceremony by a lake upstate. The leaves were turning, painting the trees in brilliant shades of fire orange and deep red, and they all reflected perfectly on the still glass-like water. Liam had handled almost everything. He insisted. He said my only job was to be happy and to show up. And I was. I was impossibly, breathtakingly happy. I remember every detail. I remember my white dress, a simple lace sheath that had taken me months to find. I remember seeing him standing at the altar in his perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his back to the water. He was not looking at the guests or the minister. He was looking only at me as I walked toward him, and his eyes were shining. He smiled that smile, the one that had captured me from the very first night, and I felt my knees go weak. This was my life, this perfect man, this perfect day. It was all real, and it was all mine. Then came the vows. We wrote our own, but we included the traditional ones as well. And when I stood there holding his warm, strong hands in mine, looking into those sincere, adoring eyes, I actually believed every single word, for better or for worse. I remember saying it, my voice thick with emotion, but strong. I meant it. I truly, deeply meant it. In sickness and in health. Yes, I thought, I would nurse him through any flu, any illness, any hardship, to love and to cherish. That was the easy part, that I could do forever. Those words. God, those words. They come back to haunt me now, echoing in the dark when I am trying to sleep. Till death do us part. I clung to that phrase. I believed in it with the full, unwavering force of my 25-year-old heart. I believed in the for better or worse part more than anything. I was a practical person. I was a teacher. I knew life was not a fairy tale. I knew there would be bad times. In my mind, worse meant arguments about money. It meant disagreements about where to spend Christmas. Worse meant one of us losing a job or facing a financial struggle. Sickness meant cancer or a broken leg, or the kind of long-term illness that tests a partnership. I was prepared for that. I was ready to fight those battles with him. I never, not for one single solitary second, imagined that worse meant him. I never imagined sickness meant the one living inside his head, the monster he kept so perfectly hidden. I never knew worse could be so terrifying, so deliberate, so horrifying. I never knew that the man promising to cherish me would be the very person who would try to destroy me. I promised to stay till death do us part, and that I would learn was the promise he intended to make me keep. The worst part, God, it came so much sooner than I ever could have imagined. But not yet. Not then. The first 6 months were a dream. It was not just a honeymoon phase, it was a state of perfect domestic bliss. We moved into a beautiful 2-story colonial in a quiet Seattle suburb, the kind of house with a deep front porch and a maple tree in the yard that turned bright red, just like at our wedding. I was teaching my 3rd grade class, a job I loved. Liam was excelling at his marketing firm. We were the perfect couple living the perfect life. He was the ideal husband. He was everything he had promised my father he would be, and more. He would wake up before me every single morning just to make coffee. I would come downstairs still in my robe and half asleep, and he would be there leaning against the counter in his suit pants and a t-shirt, holding out my favorite mug. "Morning, beautiful," he would say. "Your coffee is ready." When I came home from work exhausted after dealing with 25 energetic 8-year-olds, he would have dinner started. He would kiss me, take my bag, and pour me a glass of wine. He would listen to me talk about my day, about which student had a breakthrough in reading, about which one had drawn on the wall. He would listen just like he always had, with that same focused, unwavering intensity. Later, when we were on the couch watching some show, he would pull my feet into his lap and start massaging them. "You're on your feet all day," he would murmur. "You deserve this." He was attentive, he was thoughtful, he was kind, he was my partner in every sense of the word. I remember thinking so clearly as I sat there with my feet in his hands and his arm around me, this is it. This is happiness. This is what love is supposed to feel like. It was not just excitement or passion. It was safety. It was comfort. It was knowing I had a soft place to land no matter what. I had never, ever felt so safe. 6 months. That is all the time I got. 6 months of the man I married. 6 months of the life I thought I was building. That is all it took for the mask to slip. 6 months for the perfect, loving, supportive man I had fallen in love with to disappear. And for the real him, the monster hiding behind that charming smile, to finally emerge. It was a Tuesday, a completely ordinary Tuesday in late April, 6 months after our wedding. I remember it was raining, that signature Seattle drizzle that never really starts and never really stops, coating the world in a perpetual gray dampness. I had a long, grueling day at school. One of my 3rd graders, a sweet boy named Leo, had thrown up all over the reading corner rug, and another student, a little girl who was struggling with her parents' divorce, had a complete, inconsolable meltdown during math that lasted almost an hour. I was tired, my feet ached, my head throbbed, and all I wanted was a hot bath and a glass of wine. But it was Tuesday, and Tuesday was Liam's favorite meal, chicken parmesan. I was still in that phase of our marriage where I, as the wife, felt this deep driving need to make his life perfect. He worked so hard at the firm, he was under so much pressure. My job, the one I had chosen, was to be his sanctuary, his soft place to land. So I stopped at the expensive grocery store on the way home buying the imported Parmesan. He liked the fresh mozzarella packed in water and a bunch of organic basil that cost a ridiculous $9. I spent over an hour in the kitchen meticulously breading the chicken cutlets, simmering the sauce I had made from scratch over the weekend. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted him to be happy. His happiness, I was learning, had become my primary goal. It was my job as the woman who had sacrificed her own career goals to support his, to make our home life seamless. The house smelled wonderful, like roasted garlic and tomatoes and oregano. I felt that familiar, hopeful flutter in my chest as I listened for the sound of his key in the front door. He came home at 6:30, exactly on time. He was always punctual. "Hey, beautiful," he called out, his voice echoing from the foyer. He dropped his heavy leather briefcase by the door, the sound thudding against the hardwood floor. He came into the kitchen, his tie already loosened, and kissed me. His lips were still cold from the rain. "Smells incredible in here, Eliza." He smiled, that perfect room-lighting smile that still made my stomach flip. "I'm starving. Brutal day." "Mine too," I said, smiling back, relieved. "Dinner's ready." I felt a swell of pride. I had done it. A perfect, comforting meal for my perfect, hard-working husband. I used our best oven mitts to pull the heavy glass baking dish from the oven. And that is when my stomach dropped. I had left it in for just 2 or 3 minutes too long. In my exhaustion, I must have misread the timer. The edges, the cheese and breadcrumbs around the entire rim of the dish were not just a lovely golden brown. They were dark, charred in some places, a tiny, insignificant flaw, 1/8 of an inch of burnt crust. I mentally winced, a shot of adrenaline hitting my system. I prayed he would not notice. I quickly plated his dinner, carefully choosing the best, most perfect centerpiece, the one farthest from the scorched edges. I sat down opposite him, my heart suddenly beating just a little too fast, a ridiculous, anxious pulse in my throat. He took a bite. He chewed slowly. His eyes were on his plate. He took a second bite, this one smaller, and his face changed. It was not just disappointment. It was not just annoyance. It was like watching a switch flip behind his eyes, a heavy iron lever pulled in his soul. One second, he was Liam, my husband, the man who had brought me lilies on our second date. The next second, he was someone I had never seen before. A stranger. His jaw tightened so hard, a muscle jumped. His eyes, the warm, adoring eyes I loved, went cold and dark and completely, utterly empty. They filled with a silent, simmering rage that seemed to come from nowhere, a rage that was so vast and terrifyingly out of proportion to the sin of burnt cheese that I could not breathe. He put his fork down, not gently, but with a sharp, deliberate clatter against the ceramic plate. "You can't even cook a simple meal right." His voice was not loud. It was the opposite. It was low, quiet, and vibrating with a coiled danger I had never heard in my life. It was a hiss. "Liam, What kind of wife are you?" He interrupted, his eyes still fixed on the plate as if the burnt chicken had personally insulted him. I froze. I could not process the words or the tone or the venom. This had to be a joke, a very bad, very cruel joke. He was stressed. He was just having a terrible day, like he said. He did not mean it. I tried to laugh. It came out as a weak, pathetic, nervous little sound, a high-pitched titter that sounded foreign in the quiet room. "Oh, Liam, I'm so sorry," I stammered, trying desperately to keep my voice light to pull us back from this strange, dark place. "It's just a little overdone around the edges. It's just chicken. It's not a big deal. I can make something else. That is when his hand connected with my face. It was not a slap, not like you see in the movies. It was a sharp, hot, violent crack of sound that echoed through our perfect kitchen, a sound so loud it seemed to shake the wine glasses on the shelf. It was not just a sound. It was a physical force, an open-palmed blow, delivered with such speed and force that it snapped my head to the side, sending a brutal, stinging shockwave from my cheekbone all the way down my neck and into my shoulder. My hair, which I had pulled back, whipped across my face, the ends stinging my other eye. The world stopped. The absolute silence that followed was deafening. It rushed in to fill the space where the sound had been. The only noise in the entire house was the high-pitched electric ringing in my left ear. My cheek was on fire, a furious radiating heat. I could feel the individual points of his fingers tingling on my skin, a phantom print. The air was sucked out of the room, leaving a vacuum that pressed against my lungs. I stood there frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. My hand, moving entirely on its own, slowly rose to press against my burning cheek. I could feel the blood rushing to the surface under my palm, and the smell, the rich, comforting smell of garlic and tomato sauce and basil that had filled me with such pride moments before, suddenly became overwhelming, rancid, nauseating. It filled my throat thick and acidic, and I thought I was going to be sick right there on the kitchen floor. He hit me. The thought was so alien, so impossible. It was like my brain could not form the words. Liam, my husband. He hit me. No, he did not. He could not have. It was an accident. He was gesticulating. He was just stressed. But my cheek was on fire. A painful, agonizing tingle was spreading, and my eye was already starting to water. God, he hit me. My eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated shock. What did I do? What did I do wrong? I laughed. He said I disrespected him. I ruined dinner. It's my fault. I'm a terrible wife. He's under so much pressure at work. He told me this morning his boss was writing him about a deadline. Yes, that's it. It's the work. It's the stress. It was my fault for laughing. I provoked him. This entire pathetic spiral of self-blame happened in the space of 3 seconds. Don't you ever, he hissed. The words cut through the ringing in my ears, and I flinched, my whole body tensing, bracing for another blow. His face was inches from mine, his eyes black pits of rage. Don't you ever laugh at me. Don't you ever disrespect me like that again. I just stood there, my hand pressed to my cheek, the hot, silent tears of shock now streaming down my face. I should have left right then. I should have walked out that door, gotten in my car, and driven to my parents' house. I should have called the police. I should have screamed for my neighbors. I should have done 1,000 different things, but I did not. I just stood there paralyzed by the shock and by the tiny, insidious voice in my head that was already whispering it was my fault. You want to know why I did not leave, why I did not walk out that door and never look back? Because 30 seconds later, 30 seconds after his hand had cracked across my face, he started to cry. It was not a sniffle. It was not a quiet, remorseful tear. It was a complete, shattering, animalistic breakdown. His face, which had been a mask of cold, terrifying fury, just crumpled. He let out a choked, gagging sound, a sob that sounded like it was physically torn from his chest. Actual heavy tears began streaming down his face, dripping from his chin. He sank to his knees. He just dropped right there on the expensive kitchen tile I had mopped that morning in front of the half-eaten burnt chicken. He crawled the small distance between us. He grabbed my hands, pulling my own hand away from my stinging, throbbing face. He held both of my hands in his grip desperate, his head bowed as if in prayer. His tears splashed onto my knuckles. "I'm so sorry," he wept. He was actually weeping, his shoulders shaking violently. "Eliza, baby, I am so sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't know what came over me." He looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen and pleading. In that instant, he looked terrified. He looked like my Liam again. It's just so stressful, Eliza. My boss is trying to kill me. This new project is falling apart. I snapped. I just saw red." He pressed my hands to his wet cheek. "But I would never hurt you. You have to know that. I would never, ever hurt you. You are my life. You are the only good thing in my life. I love you so much." He was begging now, his voice cracking. "Please," he begged, "please forgive me, baby. Please. It will never, ever happen again. I swear to God. I swear on my life, Eliza. It will never happen again." And God help me. I believed him. In that moment, kneeling on my kitchen floor, crying and broken, he looked more broken than I felt. I did not just believe him. I wanted to believe him more than I had ever wanted anything in my life. I wanted to rewind the last 5 minutes. I wanted to unburn the chicken. I wanted to unhear the sound of that slap, to unfeel the sting. I wanted my husband back. The man I had married was right there begging at my feet. The most overwhelming feeling that washed over me was not anger. It was not even fear anymore, not the sharp, paralyzing fear of a moment ago. It was relief. A sudden, dizzying, all-encompassing relief. The tension that had cracked the air in our kitchen, that terrifying cold rage that had come from nowhere, was gone. The monster had vanished. The stranger with the dead eyes was gone. And Liam, my Liam, the man who massaged my feet and brought me coffee every single morning, was back. He was here, and he was horrified by what had happened. He was crying, begging for my forgiveness. I realized I was still standing, hovering over him while he knelt. I immediately dropped to the floor, too, my knees hitting the cold tile. I wrapped my arms around his shaking shoulders. "It's okay," I whispered, my voice trembling, my own tears now mixing with his. "Liam, it's okay. I know you're stressed. It's okay. I understand. We're okay." I was comforting him. My cheek was still on fire, a deep, throbbing, pulsating heat that I knew would bruise, but I was comforting the man who had put that fire there. I was desperately, frantically trying to fix it. I was desperate to return to normal as fast as humanly possible. I wanted to erase the incident, to prove that our marriage, his love, was stronger than one horrible, out-of-character moment. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a horrifying, terrible anomaly. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone snaps. He was under so much pressure at work, pressure I could not even imagine. I made excuses for him. I rationalized it. And then the insidious, toxic whisper started in my own head. I blamed myself. Maybe I should not have laughed. He was right. It was disrespectful when he was already so stressed. I had ruined his favorite meal after he had a terrible day. Maybe I had provoked him somehow without even realizing it. I was the one who was supposed to be his sanctuary, his safe place, and I had failed. I had made him feel disrespected in his own home. This was my fault, too. The next day, I woke up with a dull ache in my jaw and a faint yellowish-purple bruise starting to bloom high on my cheekbone. Liam was already gone to work, but there was a note on the nightstand. "I love you more than anything. Forgive me." At 10 in the morning, the doorbell rang. It was a floral delivery, 24 white roses, my favorite, in a massive crystal vase. When he came home that night, he was the man I had married. He was the man from the wedding. He was sweet, attentive, and deeply, deeply apologetic. He held me gently as if I were made of porcelain, his touch feather light. He presented me with a small, dark blue velvet box. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet. It was delicate, beautiful, and must have cost a fortune. "I am so sorry, Eliza," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he fastened it around my wrist. "This will never ever happen again." He took me to my favorite restaurant, that absurdly expensive French place downtown, the one we were saving for our anniversary. He held my hand across the table. He told me I was the most important thing in his life. He made me laugh, and I smiled. I actually smiled. I wore the new bracelet. I admired the 24 roses dominating our dining room table. I covered the faint bruise on my cheek with an extra layer of concealer and foundation, a new terrible skill I was teaching myself. I smiled, and I thanked him for the gifts, for the dinner, for loving me. I pretended everything was fine. I forced it to be fine. I chose to believe it was fine. But it was not fine. It was never going to be fine again. The second time it happened was 3 weeks later, not 6 months. 3 weeks. I had forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning. It was such a simple, stupid human mistake. I had gotten busy at school grading papers. My mind was full of my students, and it completely slipped my mind. He had asked me that morning to grab it on my way home. When he came home from work and realized I had not done it, that his favorite gray suit, the one he wanted for a meeting the next day, was not hanging in the closet, his face did not just change. It transformed. The mask did not slip. It was ripped away. This time there was no warning. There was no quiet rage building. He just exploded. "You had one job!" He roared, his voice so loud it seemed to shake the walls. "Liam, I'm so sorry, I just forgot." I stammered, my heart instantly leaping into my throat. "I can go right now. They're open until..." This time it was not a slap. He grabbed me by the hair, a fistful of it at the crown of my head, yanking my head back so hard, my neck popped and I cried out. He slammed me against the wall in the hallway. The back of my head hit the plaster with a dull, sickening thud. I felt the air leave my lungs in a painful, wheezing rush. I saw stars, a flash of white spots dancing in front of my eyes. He held me there, his face inches from mine, his hand still twisted in my hair, pulling so hard, tears streamed from my eyes. "You have one job as my wife," he spat, his voice a furious spray of saliva hitting my face. "One job, to take care of me, to do what I ask, and you can't even do that." Then he just shoved me. He shoved me hard and I stumbled, my legs tangled, and I fell to the ground in a heap. He stepped over me, his face a mask of pure disgust, and walked into the living room like nothing had happened. He turned on the television. I heard the bright, cheerful theme song of a sitcom fill the silence. I lay there on the hardwood floor of the hallway, my scalp burning the back of my head, throbbing, crying, confused, and absolutely terrified. This was not my husband. This was not the man I married, but it was. I was finally realizing it. He was both men. He was the charming, loving husband in public, the one who bought me diamonds and roses. And he was this. He was the monster behind closed doors. After that, it became a pattern, a sick, twisted, predictable cycle that I got trapped in. He would hurt me. Then he would apologize, crying, begging, swearing. It was the last time, blaming his work, his stress, or me. He would buy me gifts, be sweet and loving for a few days, maybe a week, if I was lucky, and behaved perfectly, walking on eggshells, anticipating his every need. And then something would set him off again. The laundry was not folded right. The dinner was 2 minutes late. A phone call I did not answer fast enough. And the violence would return. Each time it was worse than the last. Each time I told myself it would be the last time. Each time I was wrong. He started isolating me almost immediately after the cycle began. It was surgical. First, it was my friends. It started subtly wrapped in the language of romance and concern. I would be getting ready for my monthly girls' night, maybe putting on makeup, and he would come up behind me. He would wrap his arms around my waist, nuzzle my neck, his voice a low, persuasive rumble. "Do you really need to go out with the girls tonight?" he would murmur against my skin. "I thought we could just spend time together. I've missed you all day. We could order takeout, open that bottle of red." How could I say no to that? How could I choose a loud bar over a romantic night with my perfect husband, the one who was trying so hard? So I would text them, "So sorry, feeling a headache coming on, rain check?" Then it escalated. It became about control. My phone would buzz on the coffee table. "Chloe." "Why are you always on the phone with Chloe?" He would demand, his tone sharp, no longer romantic. "What could you possibly have to talk about for so long? Am I not enough for you? Is this—" He would gesture around our perfect living room. "Not enough for you?" The guilt was suffocating. I started letting Chloe's calls go to voicemail just to keep the peace. Finally, it became about rage. I made the mistake of making plans for a simple Saturday brunch. When I told him, he did not get romantic. He did not act hurt. He exploded. "You are choosing them over me," he roared, his face turning red. "You are choosing brunch over your own husband. What is wrong with you?" So I stopped making plans. I stopped calling my friends. I stopped texting back right away. It was just easier. It was just safer. Dealing with his anger, the walking on eggshells, the days of silent treatment, or worse, the sudden flash of his hand was not worth it. The isolation was easier than the violence. Chloe, my best friend since college, did not give up that easily. She was stubborn, she knew me, and she knew something was wrong. It was a Saturday afternoon, maybe 4 months into this new nightmare. I had canceled our standing coffee date 3 times in a row. The first time I told her I had to grade papers. The second time I said I had a migraine. The third time, just 2 days prior, I had texted her, "Coming down with a terrible flu, don't want you to catch it." It was a flimsy excuse, and we both knew it. The doorbell rang. I was upstairs in the bedroom folding laundry. Liam was downstairs in his office. My heart leaped into my throat. We never had unexpected visitors. Ever. Liam hated it. I looked through the blinds. Chloe's red Prius was parked at the curb. I heard Liam's office door open, his heavy footsteps in the foyer. The front door opened. I froze my hands full of one of his t-shirts. I crept out of the bedroom and stood at the top of the stairs, hidden in the shadows of the landing, listening. "Chloe." Liam's voice was a masterpiece of warm, welcoming charm. He sounded delighted to see her. What a great surprise. "Hey, Liam." I heard Chloe's voice, hesitant but firm. "I was just in the neighborhood. I wanted to see how Eliza was feeling. 3 cancellations in a row, I'm worried about her." "Oh, you're so sweet to check in," Liam said. His voice was pure honey. She's really wiped out. This flu has hit her hard. She's finally resting, just fell asleep a little while ago. I hate to wake her." I stood at the top of the stairs, my body rigid. I wanted to run down. I wanted to scream, "I'm not sick, Chloe, help me!" But I looked down at my own arm, the arm holding the t-shirt. A new bruise, a dark, ugly purple-green splotch was blooming on my bicep from where he had grabbed me the night before, furious that I had forgotten to buy his favorite brand of coffee. I could not let her see it. I could not. "What would I say, Liam, please?" Chloe insisted. I loved her for her stubbornness. "I just want to see her for 5 minutes. I just need to see her with my own eyes. She sounded really off on the phone last week. I'm really, really worried." There was a pause. The warm, welcoming energy vanished from the foyer. I heard the scuff of Liam's shoe as he shifted his weight. "Listen, Chloe," he said, and his voice changed. The honey was gone. It was replaced by that low, dangerous, quiet tone I knew so well. It was the chicken parmesan voice. It was the dry cleaning voice. I heard the front door creak as he stepped halfway out onto the porch, pulling the door partially closed behind him, as if to shield their private conversation from me. But I could still hear every single word. "I think you should go," he said, his voice flat and cold. Eliza is very sensitive right now." He cut her off. "She's very stressed. This job, this flu, she's emotionally fragile. And frankly, I don't want your presence." And he hit that word presence with such quiet venom, making it worse for her. "She gets all worked up after you call. It's not good for her. It's not helping. So as her husband, I'm asking you to please leave. You understand, right?" It was a threat disguised as concern. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. He was not just turning her away, he was blaming her for my stress. There was a long, terrible silence. I could picture Chloe standing on our porch, confused, hurt, and completely blindsided. She was being told that her very presence, her friendship, was toxic. "I okay?" she finally said. Her voice was small, defeated. "Okay, Liam, just tell her I love her. Tell her to call me." "Of course," Liam said, his voice instantly warm again. "I'll do that as soon as she wakes up. Thanks for stopping by, Chloe. You're a good friend." I heard her footsteps retreat down the walkway. The front door closed with a soft final click. I stood motionless in the shadows. I heard him lock the deadbolt. He did not move for a long moment. Then slowly he turned and looked right up the stairs, straight into the darkness where I was hiding. He had known I was there the whole time. He did not yell. He did not look angry. He wore an expression of pure theatrical disappointment, a look of profound paternal sadness. He sighed a heavy put-upon sound. "You see," he called up to me, his voice gentle, dripping with fake sympathy. "You see how much trouble your friends are. They're so pushy. They don't care about your health. They just stress you out." I backed away from the stairs, my hands shaking. I felt a wave of nausea. He was right. Chloe had stressed me out. My heart was pounding. I felt sick with anxiety. And I felt a new, horrible feeling. I felt guilt. He had twisted it. He had taken Chloe's love, her genuine, terrified concern for my well-being, and turned it into a burden. He made her the problem. He made me the fragile object he had to protect from the outside world. I did not call Chloe back. I could not. I was too ashamed. It was about a year after the wedding. The violence was still sporadic then, not a daily occurrence, but a terrifying thunderstorm that would pass through, leaving a tense, ringing silence and a subsequent shower of apologies and expensive gifts. The cycle was exhausting, but in between those storms, my life as a teacher was my anchor. It was the only part of me that still felt like me. I loved my job. I was not just a teacher, I was a teacher. I poured everything I had into those third-grade kids. My classroom was my sanctuary. That fall, an opportunity came up at school, the team lead position for the third grade. It was not just a title or a small raise. It was a validation. It was a step toward the future I had always planned for myself. It was my dream. It meant I was good at what I did, that my passion mattered. I started working on my presentation for the school board immediately. I worked on that presentation for 3 straight weeks. I worked late nights after Liam fell asleep, and I woke up early before he was awake. I pored over curriculum data. I designed new integrated project-based learning modules. I was proud of it. I felt the best work I had ever done. Liam, of course, seemed supportive, just as he had always been about my career. He would bring me tea while I worked at the kitchen table, the same table where he had first raged about the chicken. But his support now had an edge, a passive-aggressive chill I was starting to recognize. "You're working so hard, baby," he would say, his hand rubbing my back, but his fingers were too tight. "You're always working. You look exhausted." A few days later, it was sharper. "Are you still working on that thing I thought we could watch a movie? You're spending more time on that stupid presentation than you are with your husband." He would laugh as if it were a joke, but his eyes were cold. It was not a joke. He was starting to complain constantly that I neglected him, that my focus was always on those kids and not on him. I felt a constant sickening pull of guilt. I was trying to be a great teacher and a great wife, and in his eyes I was failing miserably at the latter. The night before the presentation, I was in the zone. I was running on pure adrenaline and caffeine. My presentation was finally perfect. The slides were done. My notes were tight. I had data. I had new curriculum ideas. I was going to get this promotion. I was proud. I left my laptop on the kitchen table for just 1 minute. 1 minute! I was so excited I ran into the living room to grab the educational theory textbook I was going to quote in my closing statement. The house was quiet. I grabbed the book, turned around, and then I heard it from the kitchen. "Oops." It was Liam's voice, a single, casual, almost cheerful word. It was followed immediately by the sound of liquid splashing, a lot of it, and the sound of hot liquid hitting a hot surface. A sizzle. A cold, sick, icy feeling washed over me. I ran back into the kitchen. Liam was standing by the table, an empty coffee mug in his hand, the large one I had bought him for Christmas. My laptop, my silver, beautiful laptop, was swimming in a dark, steaming pool of black coffee. He had not just spilled it. He had, in his clumsiness, managed to empty the entire mug directly onto the keyboard and the ventilation fan. "Oh my God, Eliza," he said, his eyes wide with the most fake theatrical shock I had ever seen. "Baby, I'm so clumsy. I'm so sorry. I was just setting my mug down. I didn't even see your computer there." I stared at it. The screen flickered a horrible electric green, and then it hissed. And then it went black. Just black. The smell of burnt coffee and shorted-out plastic filled the air. The presentation, my notes, the data, the curriculum modules, 3 weeks of my life, my promotion, everything. Gone. I did not scream. I did not yell. I just made this small, strangled animal sound in the back of my throat. The heavy textbook slipped from my numb hand and hit the kitchen floor with a heavy final thud. And I started to cry. Not quiet tears. I mean horrible, ugly, gasping sobs of absolute despair. I collapsed into a kitchen chair, my head in my hands, completely, utterly broken. Instantly, Liam was in action. He knelt on the floor in front of me, completely ignoring the destroyed, coffee-drenched laptop. He pulled me into a hug, his arms strong and comforting, pressing my sobbing face into the soft cotton of his shirt. "Shh, baby, shh," he cooed, his voice a perfect imitation of concern. "It's okay. It's just a stupid computer. It's just a presentation. Don't cry. Oh, come on, don't cry like that." He pulled back his hands, cupping my face, his thumbs wiping away my tears with that practiced, gentle touch I had once loved. He looked devastated for me. "Look at you." He whispered, his voice full of such profound, tender concern, it cut right through my panic and my grief. Eliza, just look at yourself. You are a complete wreck. You're shaking. You're falling apart over one presentation. I tried to speak, my voice choked. But it was my promotion. All my work. I know, he said, stroking my hair, his touch so soft, so kind. But listen to me. This job, this stress, it's too much for you. I hate seeing you like this. I hate seeing you this unhappy, this high-strung. You're not built for this kind of corporate pressure, baby. You're too sensitive. You're too good for it. He kissed my forehead, a long, paternal, comforting kiss. You don't need this, Eliza. He continued, his voice a hypnotic, loving whisper. I make enough money. I make more than enough for both of us. You should be at home. You should be resting. You should let me take care of you. I'll take care of you. You can take care of me. You can take care of our beautiful home. Wouldn't that be better? No more deadlines. No more stress. No more crying over spilled coffee. Isn't that what you really want? I did not go to the presentation the next day. I could not. I had nothing. I called in sick, my voice thick and dead from crying. I told my principal I had a family emergency. I did not get the promotion. My passion, my job, my sanctuary suddenly felt tainted. It felt, as he had so cleverly framed it, like the source of my failure, the reason I was so sensitive and high-strung and falling apart. 1 month later, completely defeated and utterly convinced by Liam that I was not cut out for the stress of a real career, I submitted my resignation. He made me feel like he had saved me. He presented it as a rescue. He was my hero, taking the crushing burden of the world off my fragile shoulders. He was praised by our families for taking care of me so well that I did not have to work. But what he actually did was cut my lifeline. He had not saved me. He had sabotaged me. I had sacrificed my career, my passion, my financial independence, my entire identity to take care of him. It was the biggest, most catastrophic mistake of my life. The shift was immediate. The second my name was off the school's payroll, the financial control became absolute. Our joint bank account, where my teaching salary and his marketing salary had once gone, suddenly became his account. It's just easier, baby, he said, smiling as he showed me the new bank statements with only his name on them. Since I'm managing all the bills now, you don't need to worry your pretty head about it. I've got you. I had no money. I had no access. He gave me a small allowance in cash every Monday morning for groceries, and I had to bring him the receipts for everything I bought, every single dollar. If I was even $5 over, he would sit me down at the kitchen table and lecture me, his voice full of disappointment, about stealing from him, about being financially irresponsible and wasteful. I was completely, totally dependent on him. I was a prisoner in my own beautiful 2-story colonial home, and he held the only key. The cycle of abuse, that predictable toxic pattern of explosion, apology, and honeymoon, eventually dissolved. It was too inefficient for him. The apologies became shorter, mumbled, and then they stopped altogether. The honeymoon phase, the gifts, the diamond bracelets, and the 24 roses vanished. It melted away, and all that was left was the explosion. The violence stopped being a matter of if and became a matter of when. What started as a horrifying incident every few weeks, then became a tense weekly punishment for some imagined failure, soon metastasized into a daily reality. Every single day he found a reason. There was no longer any need for a big provocation like burnt chicken or forgotten dry cleaning. The reasons became microscopic, insane. The house was not clean enough, a speck of dust on the television screen he would wipe with his finger and show me. Dinner was not ready on time precisely at 6:30, the exact second his car door slammed. I had looked at him the wrong way, my gaze too blank or, God forbid, too challenging. I had said something that annoyed him, my voice too high or too soft. I had breathed too loudly while he was trying to read. It did not matter what I did or did not do. Nothing was ever right. Nothing was ever good enough. And he was smart about it. He was so smart. He was calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. He stopped hitting my face mostly. He knew I could not go to the grocery store, the only place he allowed me to go, with a black eye. He did not want the neighbors to talk. Instead, he would punch me in the stomach hard, knocking the wind out of me. He knew the bruises would be hidden by my shirt. He would grab me by the hair from behind while I was washing dishes and yank me to my knees, my head cracking against the kitchen cabinets. He would twist my arms behind my back, a move he called playfully wrestling, until I heard something pop in my shoulder and screamed in agony. He would kick me when I was down on the ground, his hard-soled work shoes connecting with my shins or my back, leaving deep, aching bruises on the bone. And the whole time, the entire time, he would tell me it was my fault. "You see this?" He would pant, standing over me while I curled into a ball on the floor, my arms over my head. "You made me do this. You know I hate doing this, Eliza." He would crouch down his face, a mask of profound disappointment, as if I had failed him. "You deserved this. If you just listened to me, if you just did what you were supposed to do, if you were just a better wife, I would not have to discipline you." Discipline. That was the word he used. That was his word for it. Like I was a disobedient child, a bad dog who needed to be taught a lesson. Like his violence was somehow a justified, rational response to my endless failures. He was not a monster in his own mind. He was a teacher, a trainer. And his methods were in his sick, twisted logic, necessary for my own good. And the most terrifying part, some days exhausted and broken, I almost believed him. My life became a performance of hiding. I started wearing long-sleeved shirts, even in the dead of the Seattle summer when the humidity was thick and suffocating. I wore turtlenecks to hide the dark, ugly fingerprints he would leave around my neck after he choked me, which he called keeping me quiet. I wore sunglasses even indoors sometimes, claiming a migraine to cover the swollen, discolored skin around my eyes. Makeup. God, the makeup. So much makeup. I learned to be an expert. I spent the tiny grocery allowance I had on the most expensive, thickest waterproof concealer I could find. I layered it thick like spackle, hiding the roadmap of his rage that painted my skin in shades of purple, blue, yellow, and sickly green. I was an artist whose only canvas was her own suffering, and my masterpiece was the illusion of a normal, happy marriage. I looked in the mirror one day, and I barely recognized myself. I had lost so much weight, maybe 30 pounds in 6 months. I was too anxious to eat. Food tasted like ash in my mouth. My clothes, the ones he had not yet thrown out, hung off my skeletal frame. My skin was gray. My eyes, which he had once said were so bright and full of life, were just hollow. They were haunted, empty windows. I looked like a ghost. I felt like one too. I was just a whisper, a shadow floating through the perfect house, trying not to make a sound, trying not to be seen, trying not to be touched. There were nights I thought about ending it myself. The pain, the fear, the crushing, absolute hopelessness. It was too much. It was a living death. I would stand in the bathroom, the door locked, my only moments of privacy. I would stand there with a bottle of sleeping pills, the ones he kept in the cabinet, thinking how easy it would be, how simple. Just swallow them all. Just drift away into nothingness. No more pain, no more fear, no more him. I would just be gone. But I could not do it. I never could. Some small, terrified, stubborn part of me, some tiny ember that he had not managed to completely extinguish, held on. It was a microscopic spark buried deep under the ash of my fear. It held on to a memory, the memory of the woman I used to be, the teacher, the friend, the daughter, the girl who had dreams, the girl who was strong. I held on to the memory of who I could be again if I could just survive long enough to escape. I tried to leave once, just once. It was about 2 years into the marriage, after a particularly bad night. He had found a single long hair of mine on the shoulder of his black suit jacket, one he was preparing for a business trip. He accused me of being sloppy, of being disgusting, of trying to mark his clothes so other women would not look at him. His rage was so sudden and so violent that he grabbed me and threw me against the hallway wall. My hip and lower back took the full impact against the sharp corner of the drywall. The pain was immediate and blinding, a white-hot flash that stole my breath. I had crumpled to the floor, unable to move. I could not walk properly for 2 days. I limped around the house, biting my lip to keep from crying out, telling him it was just a bad sprain, all while that deep, agonizing ache in my hip radiated down my leg. That pain, however, did something new. It cut through the thick, paralyzing fog of my fear and hopelessness. It hardened into a cold, quiet resolve. I was going to leave, or I was going to die in that house. I waited a week. I pretended everything was fine. I was the perfect, obedient, silent wife. I apologized for the hair for my clumsiness in falling. All the while I was planning. I had been saving money, tiny amounts for months. I would get $50 cash back when I bought groceries, the one task he still allowed me to do alone because he hated doing it. I would tell him the groceries cost $200 instead of $150, and I would hide the 20 sometimes, just a 10, in an empty tampon box buried at the bottom of the vanity cabinet, hidden under a pile of old expired cough drops. It was pathetic, maybe $300 in total, but it was my money. The following Thursday, I watched his car pull out of the driveway at exactly 7:30 a.m. I stood at the window, my heart hammering so hard against my ribs, I thought it might crack one. I waited 10 full minutes, my whole body vibrating, convinced he would come back for a forgotten file, a forgotten phone, a forgotten reason to punish me. He did not. I moved. I did not run. I moved with a deliberate, silent speed. I went to the guest room closet to the back behind the old winter coats. I pulled out a small plain duffel bag. I packed 3 t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my toothbrush, a new bar of soap, and the precious wad of cash from the tampon box. I did not take my phone. I just knew he tracked my phone. I did not take my wallet, just the cash and my driver's license. I walked, my hips still sending a dull throb down my legs, 6 blocks to the main road. I kept my head down, my hoodie pulled up over my hair, my sunglasses on even though it was overcast. I got on a city bus, my hands shaking so badly I could barely feed the dollars into the machine. I rode it across town all the way to the industrial side near the airport, a place I had never been before. I walked into the office of the Starlight Motel, a 2-story L-shaped building that looked like it had not seen fresh paint since 1980. I paid cash for one night. The room was on the second floor, number 219. It was disgusting. The moment I opened the door, the smell hit me. It was an overwhelming, gagging odor of cheap pine-scented disinfectant, a chemical smell that was failing miserably to mask the decades of stale cigarette smoke and spilled beer embedded in the walls and the filthy brown-patterned carpet. The air conditioner in the window rattled loudly, spitting out cool, musty air that smelled like mold. I ran my hand over the bedspread. It was a horrible, stiff, mustard yellow comforter, and I knew the sheets underneath would feel like sandpaper, rough and starchy against my bruised skin. Through the thin walls, I could hear the constant hollow, rumbling crash of the ice machine out on the walkway. It was the most beautiful room I had ever been in. I walked to the door, I looked at the cheap, flimsy knob lock, and I turned the deadbolt. A heavy metal click. It was such a small sound, but in that tiny, dirty room, it echoed like a cannon shot. It was the sound of freedom. I was in a room, and he was not. I was in a room, and I had the key. I slid down the back of the door, my duffel bag still on my shoulder, and I sat on the filthy carpet. A surge of hope so powerful and so unfamiliar, it felt like a drug washed through me. It was so intense, it made me dizzy. I had done it. I had actually done it. I sat there, my knees pulled to my chest, and I realized something strange. My lungs hurt. I could not figure out why. And then I understood. I was breathing. I was really breathing. I took a deep, shuddering breath, pulling that musty chemical air all the way down to the bottom of my lungs, and I held it there. It was the first full breath I had taken in 3 years. I realized in that moment that I had been living my life holding my breath. I had been in a constant, suffocating state of suspended animation, waiting for the sound of his key in the lock, waiting for the sound of his heavy footsteps on the stairs, waiting for his voice, for the tone that would tell me if it was a good night or a bad night, waiting for the next explosion. I had not taken a full, relaxed breath since the day I married him. I did it, I whispered out loud to the empty, musty room. I escaped. I dropped my head onto my knees, and I cried, But for the first time in years, the tears were not from pain or fear. They were from relief. I felt this surge of wild, terrifying, beautiful possibility. I was Eliza. I was 27 years old. I was free. I was alive. That feeling of freedom, that pure, unadulterated hope, lasted for exactly 6 hours. But he found me. I had been there for 6 hours. 6. I had just taken a shower, the hot, scalding water stinging my bruised hip, washing away the grime of the bus ride and the metaphorical grime of my life. I was wrapped in a thin, starchy motel towel that smelled like bleach. I was actually considering ordering a pizza. A whole pizza, just for me, with all the toppings I liked, and he hated. I was smiling. There was a knock on the door. A loud, firm thump, thump, thump. My heart did not leap. It did not pound. It just stopped. No, it could not be. "Housekeeping," a muffled voice called. A wave of relief so strong it made my knees weak washed over me. Oh my God, just housekeeping. I actually laughed, a weak, watery sound that caught in my throat. "No, thank you," I called out, my voice shaky and high. "I'm all set, thank you." Thump, thump, thump. Loud. Harder this time. Insistent. "Housekeeping," the voice said again. But it was different. "I need to check the minibar." That was wrong. The word minibar echoed in the tiny, dirty room. This $12 an hour room did not have a minibar. It did not even have a coffee pot. A cold, icy dread, worse than any fear I had felt before, washed over me. It started in my feet and shot up my legs, paralyzing me. I backed away from the door, my bare feet sinking into the filthy carpet. "Eliza," his voice said. It was not muffled. It was clear, quiet, calm, and absolutely lethal, coming right through the thin wood of the door. "Open the door. Don't make me break it." It was not a yell. It was not a threat. It was a simple statement of fact. He would break it. My hands were shaking so badly I could not work the deadbolt. The metal scraped against metal, a terrible, loud sound. He rattled the knob from the other side, a short, violent jerk. "Eliza, now!" I opened the door. He was there. Liam. He was not in his suit. He had changed into jeans and a dark hoodie, his hands shoved into the front pocket. He looked casual, like he was just stopping by, except for his face. I will never ever forget the look on his face. It was not just anger. I had seen his anger. This was something else. This was a deep, possessive madness. His eyes were flat black and completely void of any humanity. It was the look of an owner who had found a piece of property, an object that had tried to run away. It was pure, unfiltered rage, mixed with a terrifying absolute certainty. The certainty that I belonged to him. It was not surprise I felt. It was the complete and total collapse of my new reality. The hope I had felt, the freedom, the air in my lungs, the pizza I was going to order, it all vanished in one agonizing, silent second. My heart did not pound. It just stopped. It seized in my chest, a cold, hard knot of ice. A coldness shot from my stomach up my throat, choking me. I could not speak. I could not move. I could not breathe. He did not say a word. He did not yell, "Why?" He did not ask what I was doing. He just looked at me standing there in the cheap motel towel, and his eyes burned with a hatred so profound it was almost physical. He reached out his hand, a claw, and clamped down on my bicep, the one with the dark, ugly bruise from the wall. I screamed a high, thin sound as his fingers dug into the already tender, damaged flesh. He yanked me. He pulled me out of the room, out of my sanctuary, my bare feet stumbling on the rough concrete of the walkway. The thin towel I was wearing came undone, the knot slipping, and it pooled at my ankles. It left me standing there in front of him, in front of the world, naked, bruised, and completely exposed in the harsh afternoon light. It did not matter. He did not even look. He grabbed my arm again, his grip like a steel vise, and he dragged me. He dragged me along the walkway, past the rattling ice machine, past the closed, anonymous doors of the other rooms. He dragged me down the stairs. I stumbled, my bad hip exploding in pain as I hit a step, but he did not slow down. He did not care. He just pulled harder, half carrying, half dragging me across the cracked asphalt of the parking lot to his dark blue sedan. He ripped the passenger door open and he threw me inside. As my body hit the seat, my head cracking hard against the side window, a memory flashed, white-hot and sickening. I remembered our wedding day. I remembered him, my handsome husband, in his black tuxedo, lifting me, his bride, in my white dress so easily into his arms. He had carried me over the threshold of our new home, his smile so bright, whispering, "Welcome home, Mrs. Walker." Now he was dragging me naked and terrified over the threshold of a cheap motel room. His fingers were digging into my skin so hard, I knew they would leave new marks on top of the old ones. He slammed the door, walked around the car and got in the driver's seat. He started the engine, and we drove. The silence in that car was the loudest, most terrifying sound I have ever experienced. It was not a peaceful silence. It was a thick, pressurized, agonizing silence pregnant with the violence to come. I sat there shivering, my teeth chattering from shock and cold. I did not dare look at him. I just stared at the side window, watching the unfamiliar, bleak landscape of the industrial park blur past. My mind was screaming, "I am going to die. This is it." He told me he would kill me if I ever ran, and he meant it. He found me. He found me when I thought I was safe. He could find me anywhere. No one in the world knows where I am. No one is coming to save me. I am going to die tonight. I am going to die in our perfect house, and he will tell everyone I just disappeared. When we got home, he did not park in the garage. He parked in the driveway right in front. He hauled me out of the car. I was still barely decent. He dragged me up the front walk past my beautiful manicured flower beds. He unlocked the front door and shoved me inside. I landed in a heap on the polished hardwood floor of the foyer. He stepped in after me and closed the door. And then I heard it. I heard the sound of the deadbolt. A heavy mechanical final click. That sound. It was not just a lock. It was the sound of a prison door slamming shut. It was the sound of my hope being extinguished. It was the sound of the end of the world. He turned around. The mask was gone. The fake concern, the charm, the civilized man he pretended to be, all of it was gone. All that was left was the monster. He beat me worse than he ever had before. It was not a slap. It was not a shove. It was closed fists. He hauled me to my feet by my hair, and he hit me. He hit me in the face, in the stomach. I fell, and he kicked me his hard work shoes, connecting with my ribs, my back. I screamed, I begged, I pleaded. "Liam, please, I'm sorry, please stop." My screaming only made him angrier. He grabbed me by the throat, slamming my head back against the wall, his thumbs pressing into my windpipe. "You belong to me." And he screamed, his face inches from mine, his spittle hitting my skin. "You are my wife. You do not have the right to leave me. Do you understand me? You are mine." He threw me back to the floor. "If you ever," he panted, standing over me, his chest heaving, "ever try to run again, I will kill you. I will find you and I will kill you. Do you hear me?" And I believed him. Lying on my perfect hardwood floor in my perfect house, with blood in my mouth and the taste of bile in my throat, I absolutely believed him. The last tiny spark of fight in me, the one that had hoarded $300 in a tampon box, the one that had breathed the free air in that motel room, it died. He had snuffed it out. He was right. I was nothing without him. Who else would want me? Look at me. I was pathetic. I was weak. I was worthless. My family did not even call me anymore. I had pushed Chloe away. Liam was all I had. He was right. In that moment, as he turned his back on me and walked calmly into the kitchen to get a beer, I believed it all. I was trapped. I was trapped forever. I stopped thinking about leaving. I stopped hoping for anything better. I stopped thinking at all. My only goal from that moment forward was to survive. Hour by hour, minute by minute, just survive. It happened a few days before the end. I did not know it was the end, of course. To me, it was just another Thursday, another day to survive. Liam was in the shower. I could hear the muffled sound of the water running, a dull, rhythmic pounding through the walls. He had given me a new chore for the week. I was to deep clean his home office. This was not a request. It was a command, another one of his little tests of my obedience, another way to assert his absolute control. He knew I hated that room. It was the one place in the house that was entirely his. It was dark paneled in heavy mahogany with thick leather chairs that smelled of his cologne and an arrogance I could never quite name. It was the room where he sat at his massive desk and controlled his world, and by extension mine. I was in there dusting. My movements were small, precise, careful. The first rule of survival was to never upset his order. I would pick up a framed photo wipe beneath it with the dust rag and place it back down in the exact precise spot down to the millimeter. I was a ghost, my only job to erase any trace of dust, any trace of myself. His computer was on. He never turned it off. The large monitor glowed his inbox open. He liked to have it visible, a constant stream of his own importance. I had never looked. In 3 years of this daily suffocating hell, I had never once dared. That was a primary rule. Looking at his phone or his computer was a capital offense. I did not even know his passwords, but he had left his email open. I had cleaned his desk 100 times before, and I had always kept my eyes averted. To look was to be curious. To be curious was to be independent. To be independent was to be defiant. And to be defiant was to invite a punishment I could not bear. I was just a ghost. I cleaned. I did not see. I was straightening a stack of invoices, my hand moving mechanically, my eyes on the desk blotter. But my gaze flickered, just for a second. I scanned the screen, just a blur of black text on a white background. I was about to look away, but a line caught my eye. It was not at the top. It was far down the list. An old email, very old. The date was from 6 years ago, October, just 1 week after our wedding. The sender was his best friend, his best man, Mark. The subject line was just 2 words. About Eliza. My heart did not just pound. It stopped. It seized in my chest, a cold, hard fist. My blood went icy. He was in the shower. I could still hear the water running. I could hear his muffled, tuneless whistling. I had maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Don't do it! The voice in my head was screaming at me. Walk away. It is not worth it. The beating is not worth it. It is 6 years old. It does not matter. Just walk away. But I could not. It was about me. From 6 years ago. From when he was still the man I loved. From before the first slap. Before the monster. My hand, the one holding the dust rag, began to shake. It was a violent, uncontrollable tremor. I dropped the rag on the floor. I reached out my finger trembling, and I touched the mouse. The little arrow which had been dormant woke up and zipped across the screen. I hovered it over the subject line. I could not breathe. My lungs had turned to stone. Click. The email opened. It was short. It was a reply from Liam to his friend. Mark must have written something like, "How's married life treating you?" And Liam, my Liam, the man who had just promised my father he would take care of me, the man who was still bringing me coffee in bed, had written this. She is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Naive, totally trusting. It will not take long to train her into the perfect wife. You know how it is, man. It is like training a puppy. A few harsh words, a little discipline when she steps out of line, and she will learn her place. It is going to be great. I read it. I read it again. And a third time. My eyes scanned the words, but my brain refused to assemble them into meaning. Train, puppy, discipline, learn her place. The sound of the shower, the sound of his whistling, it all faded away. The air in the dark wood-paneled office became thick and heavy, impossible to breathe. It pressed in on me, suffocating. The room began to spin, the heavy bookshelves tilting in my vision. It was a plan. This was not work stress. This was not him losing control. This was not a sickness or a short temper or an anger management problem. This was a plan. This was a strategy. Discipline. The word he used on me now, the word he spat at me as his fist connected with my stomach, was the same word he had used then. He had been planning to discipline me 1 week after our wedding. Every moment of the last 3 years replayed in my mind, but now through this new, horrifying lens. The apologies, the tears, the bouquets of roses, the diamond bracelet after the first slap. It was not remorse. It was reinforcement. It was part of the training. It was the pat on the head, the treat, after the smack with the rolled-up newspaper. It was the calculated maneuver of an animal trainer designed to keep the puppy confused, compliant, and bonded to its master. A coldness so profound and so deep, it was almost peaceful settled in my chest. It was a cold, hard certainty. The last flickering, stupid ember of hope I had been clutching, the secret, desperate belief that the good Liam, the charming man I had married, was the real one, and that the monster was just a temporary sickness, an aberration. It died. It was extinguished completely. There was no good Liam trapped inside. There was no man to save. There was only the trainer. I had not married a man. I had married a captor. I was not his wife. I was his pet. I finally understood, and in that moment, standing in his office, surrounded by the smell of his cologne, a new, different kind of coldness entered me. I was not just afraid. I was empty. There was nothing left inside me for him to break. It was the day that changed everything. It was a Thursday. Thursdays were always bad. He had his weekly review meeting with his boss, and when he was stressed, when he felt small at work, he came home and made sure I felt smaller. I was in the kitchen, a ghost in my own home, moving with the precise, empty motions of a machine. I was making dinner exactly the way he liked it. Steak, a thick, expensive cut of filet mignon cooked to a perfect medium rare. Mashed potatoes whipped with cream and butter until they were perfectly smooth. Green beans blanched and tossed with toasted garlic. His favorite obscure craft beer was chilling in the refrigerator. I set the table with the good placemats. I did everything perfectly. But this time, for the first time, the hope was gone. That pathetic, desperate flicker of hope, I used to feel the prayer that this time it would be perfect, that this time he would smile, that this time he would be the man I married. It was dead. It had died a few days before in his office when I read that email. Train her. Puppy. Learn her place. The words were a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. I was not a wife trying to please her husband. I was an animal performing a required task, desperate to avoid the inevitable punishment. I was just trying to survive the night. When I heard his key in the lock, my entire body tensed, not with anticipation, but with the familiar, sickening jolt of pure adrenaline. I did not see my husband walk in. I saw the trainer. He did not say much. He sat down at the table. I placed the plate in front of him. He looked at it, his face unreadable. He cut a piece of the steak. He put it in his mouth. He chewed it once, twice, his expression hardening. And then he spit it out. He did not cover his mouth. He just spit the mouthful of expensive, perfectly cooked meat back onto the white ceramic plate. A chewed, gray-brown mass. "This is disgusting," he said. His voice was flat, cold, and final. "What did you do to it?" My heart was already racing, that horrible familiar gallop against my ribs. I cooked it exactly how you like it." I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "Medium rare, just like always." "It's overdone," he said, pushing the plate away with a scrape that set my teeth on edge. "You cannot do anything right, can you?" He stood up. I knew what was coming. My body moved before my brain did. I tried to back away, my feet shuffling on the tile, but there was nowhere to go. My back hit the cold, hard surface of the refrigerator. He was on me in one step. He did not hit me. Not yet. He grabbed me by the throat, his hand a vice, his fingers digging in, cutting off my air. He slammed me back against the refrigerator. My head hit the heavy metal door with a sickening, hollow thud. The world exploded in a flash of white, painful stars. The little magnets we had, the ones from our honeymoon in Italy, rattled against the steel. "I work all day," he growled, his face inches from mine, his breath hot and sour. His grip squeezed my throat tighter, and I gagged my hands, flying up to claw at his wrist. "I work all day in that hellhole to provide for you, and this is the thanks I get. A ruined dinner. You ruined it." He released my throat only to throw me. He shoved me so hard I stumbled over my own feet and crashed to the tile floor. I landed hard on my hip. I cried out, but he was already on me. He started kicking me. His hard-soled dress shoes, the expensive ones I polished for him, connected with my side, my ribs, my back, my legs. I curled into a tight fetal position, my arms wrapped around my head, my knees pulled to my chest, trying to protect my vital organs. I was crying, begging him to stop, my voice muffled against my arms. "Please, Liam, I'm sorry, please stop." But he did not stop. He was beyond rage, beyond reason. He was in a place where only the violence mattered. He kicked me again, a solid, brutal impact to my side, and I felt something crack in my chest. It was not a loud snap. It was a wet, sickening pop, followed by a pain so blinding, so sharp and electric, that all the air left my lungs in a silent scream. The pain was so bad I could not move, but he was not finished. He reached down and grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking me up from the floor, pulling me to my knees. I screamed a raw, torn sound. He held my head steady with his hand in my hair, and he started punching me in the face. It was not a slap. It was a closed fist. The first one connected with my nose. I felt the cartilage and bone crunch. It was a sound I felt more than heard. An explosion of pain. Hot, thick blood instantly poured down my face, filling my throat, choking me with the salty, metallic taste of it. I gagged, spitting blood onto the tile I had mopped that morning. "You worthless piece of trash," he screamed, his voice hoarse. "You ruin everything." Another punch. This one landed on my cheekbone, the sound a dull, heavy thud. My vision blurred, the bright kitchen lights swimming in the tears and the blood. I heard him screaming at me, but his voice sounded distorted far away, like I was at the bottom of a pool. "I should have never married you." I heard him yell, his face a mask of contorted rage. He pulled his fist back one more time. This one connected hard with my temple. Another explosion of pain, white and blinding, and then nothing. The pain vanished, the sound vanished, the light vanished. Everything just stopped. Everything went black. I did not feel myself hit the floor. I did not feel anything. I just disappeared into the darkness. I do not know how long I was unconscious. It could have been minutes, or it could have been hours. The thick, absolute blackness did not just lift. It was shattered by pain, a deep, jolting agony that matched the rhythmic, bouncing movement of the car. I was moving. The world was blurry, tilted, and smeared. I tried to open my eyes, but one of them was swollen completely shut, matted with something wet and sticky that glued the lashes together. Through my one working eye, a narrow, hazy slit, I could barely make out the dark, upholstered ceiling of a car. His car. I was in the back seat. I realized with a jolt of confusion that I was lying down, my body wedged awkwardly, my head against the door and my feet on the opposite side. He was driving. I could see the back of his head, his shoulders tense and hunched over the steering wheel. And he was talking, muttering to himself in a low, frantic, terrified voice. "Shit, shit, shit," he was saying, his voice a low growl. He hit the steering wheel with the heel of his hand, a dull thud. "Come on, Eliza, wake up. Don't you dare. Don't you dare die on me. Not now, not like this." I tried to speak, but my mouth would not work. My lips were split and swollen, and my mouth was full of the thick metallic taste of blood. Everything hurt. Every single breath sent that sharp, electric cracking pain through my chest. I must have made some sound, a low moan, a wet gurgle in my throat, because his head snapped back to look in the rearview mirror. I saw his eyes wide and white with panic. "Stay with me," he said. And for one insane, flickering moment, I thought he was concerned. I thought he was worried about me. He sounded so desperate. But then I heard what he said next, and I realized this was not about me. This was never, ever about me. This was about him. This was about him covering his tracks. Okay, I've got this," he said, his voice changing, hardening, becoming focused. His eyes were back on the road. "She fell. That's it. She fell down the stairs." He nodded to himself, a sharp, quick motion. "She fell down the stairs and hit her head. I came home from work and I found her, lying at the bottom of the stairs. I'm a concerned husband. I'm a concerned husband rushing his wife to the hospital." He kept repeating it. Over and over again, a low, frantic chant, a mantra to convince himself. She fell down the stairs. Hardwood stairs she must have slipped. She fell down the stairs. He was practicing his lie, fine-tuning it, making sure he had all the details right, the story locked in, his performance ready. I lay there in the back seat, drifting in and out of the darkness, the pain pulling me under and the sound of his voice pulling me back. I was listening to him construct the narrative, the fiction that would explain away my broken ribs, my shattered nose, my splitting head. The stairs. Of course, it is always the stairs, or walking into a door, or being clumsy. The oldest, most tired excuse in the abuser's handbook. And through the thick, agonizing haze of pain and confusion, I felt something. A tiny, microscopic spark. A hospital. He was taking me to a hospital. I would be around other people. Doctors, nurses, strangers. People who might ask questions. People who might be trained to see through his lie. This could be my chance. This might be my only chance. But that tiny spark of hope was immediately crushed, suffocated by a lifetime of his implanted fear. What if they did not believe me? What if they believed him? He was charming. He was a master performer. He would be right there with me. He would be in the room. He would control what I said. He would hold my hand and weep and play the part of the devoted, terrified husband just like he had practiced. And even if I did manage to tell someone the truth, what then? He said he would kill me if I ever tried to run. What would he do if I exposed him, if I got him in trouble? The thought of his rage, a rage beyond what I had just experienced, was enough to silence me. I must have passed out again. The pain and the fear were too much. The next thing I knew, the blackness was gone, replaced by an assault of bright, fluorescent lights. I was on my back, and the ceiling was moving. There were voices, loud, urgent, and unfamiliar. People were moving around me, their faces blurry. The emergency room. I was on a gurney being wheeled fast down a long, white hallway. I tried to focus to understand what was happening, but everything was a confusing, painful blur of motion and bright, blinding light. I was on a gurney being wheeled fast down a hallway. But through the fog, through the pain, I heard his voice, Liam's voice, loud, clear, and absolutely saturated with a thick, believable fake panic. "Please help her," he was shouting, his voice echoing in the sterile corridor. He was running alongside the gurney. "Please, you have to help my wife. I came home from work and I found her. She was at the bottom of the stairs. She must have fallen. There was blood everywhere. Please, my God, is she going to be okay?" It was such a good performance, such a perfect, flawless delivery. I could hear the catch in his throat, the manufactured sob, the precise tremor of a terrified, loving husband. If I did not know better, if I had not just lived through the raw, bloody, kicking, punching reality of what had actually happened, if I had not heard him rehearse these exact lines in the car, I would have believed him myself. Even in my hazy, pain-filled state, I could recognize the masterful acting. He was a sociopath, but he was a brilliant performer. They transferred me from the gurney to a bed in a curtained-off bay in the ER. The motion was agony. My broken ribs screamed a white-hot knife in my side, and a low animal sound of pain escaped my throat. "Shh, baby, you're safe." Liam's voice was instantly in my ear. He was hovering a dark, terrifying shadow over me, playing his part beautifully. He grabbed my hand. He started stroking my hair, the hair he had been yanking from my scalp just an hour before. His fingers, the same fingers that had dug into my throat, were now so gentle, so tender, brushing the matted, bloody strands away from my swollen face. "It's all going to be okay, Eliza," he whispered, his voice thick with fake tears. "I'm right here. They're going to take good care of you." He said the words to me, but they were not for me. They were for the medical staff. They were for the nurse who was wrapping a blood pressure cuff around my arm, for the doctor who had just pushed back the curtain. "I'm Dr. Reed," the doctor said, his voice calm and professional. He looked to be in his early 40s with a focused, no-nonsense expression. He shined a tiny, bright light into my one good eye, making me wince. "Can you tell me what happened?" I opened my mouth. My split, swollen lips cracked, and I tasted the fresh, metallic tang of blood. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "He did this. My husband. The man holding my hand. He beat me. He tried to kill me." I wanted to say the words, but I could not. The words died in my throat, choked off by a lifetime of his terror. I looked at Liam. He was standing right there, his face a perfect mask of loving concern for the doctor, but his eyes, his cold, dead eyes, were locked on mine, and even through his fake, teary gaze, I could see the warning. It was a silent, crystal-clear message screaming at me from across the bed. "Don't you dare. Don't you say a single word. Remember what I told you." Before I could even make a sound, he jumped in. "She fell down the stairs, doctor," Liam said, his voice cracking perfectly. "I wasn't home when it happened. I just got home from the office and I found her. She was unconscious at the bottom. We have these hardwood stairs and she must have slipped." Dr. Reed nodded, his expression neutral, making notes on a chart. But the nurse, a woman probably in her 50s with kind, tired eyes and short gray hair, she was not looking at Dr. Reed. She was not looking at Liam. She was looking at me. Her name tag said Cynthia. She was checking my pulse, her fingers gentle on my wrist, but her gaze was sharp. It was not pity. It was something else. It was a deep, knowing suspicion. She had heard this story before. "Ma'am," Cynthia said, her voice soft but firm, cutting right through Liam's performance. She ignored him completely, her eyes never leaving mine. "Can you tell us in your own words what happened?" The room went silent. Dr. Reed stopped writing. Liam tensed. They were all looking at me. It was my chance. It was my one chance. I looked at Cynthia, this kind stranger. I looked at Dr. Reed, the professional. And I looked at Liam, my trainer, my captor, my husband, who was standing right there, listening to every word. If I said anything, if I told the truth, what would he do to me when he got me home? He had promised he would kill me. He had promised. I whispered. My voice was a broken, hoarse croak. The fear was too strong. It was a physical thing, a cold hand wrapped around my throat, squeezing just as he had. I don't remember. The lie tasted like poison in my mouth. I remember being at the top of the stairs, and then nothing. Liam squeezed my hand. To anyone watching, to Dr. Reed, to Cynthia, it would have looked like a gesture of comfort. A husband reassuring his terrified, confused wife. But it was not. It was a punishment. It was a warning. His fingers dug into my hand, his nails biting into my skin, a sharp, specific, agonizing pressure. It was a clear, silent message. Good girl. You did what you were told. You remembered your training. "It's okay, baby," he said softly, his voice full of love for them. "You're safe now. They're going to take good care of you." Dr. Reed shone the light in my good eye again, his movements quick and efficient. "Your pupil is sluggish, Eliza. Given the obvious trauma to your head and face and your reported loss of consciousness, I am ordering a full set of X-rays and a CT scan immediately. We need to check for a concussion, any fractures, and potential internal bleeding." He looked at Cynthia, the nurse. "Let's get her prepped. We need to get this shirt off to check for any other injuries." I tensed. The shirt was just a simple, cheap cotton t-shirt I wore to sleep in, but it was stiff and caked with drying blood around the collar and chest. I knew it was stuck to me. Cynthia nodded, her face professional, but her eyes still holding that kind, knowing sadness. "Okay, honey," she said to me, her voice low. "We're just going to use the shears. It's the easiest and fastest way. We don't want to cause you any more pain by pulling it over your head." Liam, who was still clutching my hand in his, gave it a reassuring squeeze. "It's okay, baby. They're just helping. You're safe." His voice was a smooth balm of reassurance, but his eyes were sharp, darting, watching their every move. Cynthia took a pair of heavy-duty black trauma shears from her pocket. She slid the blunt end carefully under the neckline of my shirt, and with 2 or 3 quick, powerful snips, she cut the fabric right up the middle. The sound of the fabric ripping apart was loud in the small, quiet bay. She and Dr. Reed pulled the 2 halves of the bloody shirt away from my body, and the room went completely, utterly silent. The only sound in the entire world was the steady, rhythmic, electronic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor they had attached to my finger. Even Liam's fake, comforting murmuring stopped. He just froze, his hand still holding mine, but his entire body went rigid. I heard Cynthia's breath. It was not a loud gasp. It was a sharp, sudden, almost silent intake of air, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. It was the sound of a 50-year-old veteran nurse, a woman who had probably seen gunshot wounds and car crashes, seeing something that still managed to horrify her. Dr. Reed, who had been focused on my chart, looked up. His eyes scanned my torso, and his calm professional demeanor did not just change, it evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard, focused stillness. His jaw tightened. I could not see what they saw, not really, but I knew. I had seen it in the mirror every day while I applied my layers of makeup. I knew what my body looked like under my clothes. It was my secret. It was my shame. It was a roadmap of my abuse, a grotesque, colorful, detailed history of his rage painted across my skin. There were the new ones, the ones from tonight. The dark, violent purple-black bruises that were already blooming and swelling on my ribs from where he had kicked me. The angry, mottled red handprint on my throat that was already darkening to purple. But layered underneath them like a sick watercolored painting were the old ones. The yellowing, faint, oval-shaped bruises on my stomach from where he had punched me last week for burning the toast. The greenish, almost healed fingerprints on my upper arms from where he had grabbed me and shaken me 2 weeks ago for not answering his text fast enough. It was a timeline of pain, weeks and months and years of his discipline, all laid bare under the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights of the emergency room. Dr. Reed's demeanor changed instantly. He looked at the bruises. He looked at my face, at my broken, bloody nose. Then slowly he lifted his gaze and looked directly at Liam. He looked at the man who was still absurdly holding my hand, his knuckles white. Then Dr. Reed looked back at Cynthia. Something unspoken, a silent, terrible understanding passed between them. The air in the curtained bay became thick and heavy and dangerous. Doctor. Reed spoke, his voice measured, careful, and stripped of all warmth. He was no longer a doctor treating an accident victim. He was an investigator. "These bruises," he said, his voice quiet but carrying. "They appear to be in various stages of healing. Some of them are quite old, weeks old." Liam did not miss a beat. He did not hesitate for a second. His performance was flawless. He let out a small, sad, almost self-deprecating laugh. "Doctor, I know," he said, shaking his head, his voice filling with a practiced, husbandly exasperation. "I know it looks bad. She's just always been clumsy, incredibly, hopelessly clumsy." He laughed. He actually laughed, as if my broken ribs, my constellation of pain, were a punchline to a joke he had told 1,000 times. "She bruises like a peach." Liam continued his tone, becoming confidential, man to man, as if he and Dr. Reed were just two guys commiserating. "She is always, and I mean always, bumping into things. Tripping over the furniture, walking into doors. I tell her, I say, 'Eliza, you have to be more careful, baby.' But you know how it is." He smiled at Dr. Reed, a sad, indulgent, loving smile. He actually physically smiled, as if my map of injuries was just a cute, unfortunate quirk of my personality, like being bad at math or always losing my keys. Dr. Reed was not laughing. Neither was Cynthia. The doctor's face was stone. He and the nurse exchanged one more look. It was a decision. Cynthia, the 50-year-old nurse with the kind, sad eyes, stepped forward. Her entire demeanor changed. She was no longer just a kind nurse. She was a fortress. She moved her body a subtle physical block between Liam and the gurney. "We are going to take her for those scans now," she said, her voice firm, professional, and leaving no room for argument. "Sir," she said, addressing Liam directly, her eyes hard, "you will need to wait here, or you can go to the family waiting room down the hall." The charm in Liam's face evaporated instantly. It was replaced by a flash of the cold, possessive rage I knew so well. His mask slipped. "What? No! I am not leaving her. I want to go with her. She is my wife. She is scared. She needs me with her." He tightened his grip on my hand, the grip that was supposed to look like comfort, but was actually a threat. Cynthia did not flinch. She did not back down. She did not raise her voice. She just became more solid, more immovable. "It is hospital policy, sir." she said, her voice flat and final. Only essential personnel are allowed in the radiology suite during trauma scans. You can wait in the family waiting room. We will come and get you as soon as she is back. I saw the frustration flash across his face, a flicker of pure fury. He was calculating. He knew he could not argue. He could not push, not here, not now, without looking suspicious, without breaking the carefully crafted character of the concerned husband. He was trapped by his own lie. "Okay," he finally said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Okay, fine." He leaned down, his face close to mine. He kissed my forehead, his lips cold and dry against my skin. "I will be right here when you get back, baby," he whispered, his voice full of love for the staff to hear and full of pure venomous warning for me. "I am not going anywhere." That, I thought, as they started to unlock the wheels of my gurney. That is exactly what I was afraid of. They wheeled my gurney down another long white corridor. Cynthia, the nurse, was the one pushing me, while a younger technician walked alongside. We rounded a corner past the main admitting desk, and for the first time since I had arrived, we were out of sight, out of earshot of the emergency bay where Liam was waiting. The technician, a young man, walked ahead to open the double doors to the radiology department. The second he was out of earshot, Cynthia stopped pushing. The gurney came to a halt in the middle of the empty hallway. She leaned down close to me, her face just inches from mine. Her voice was a low, urgent, angry whisper. "Honey," she said, and her kind eyes were now filled with a fierce, protective fire. "Listen to me. Those bruises on your body, the new ones and the old ones, they did not come from a fall down the stairs." I just stared at her, my one good eye wide with panic. "I have been an emergency room nurse for 30 years. She continued, her voice low and fast. "I have seen everything. I have seen car crashes. I have seen gunshot wounds. And I have seen what men like your husband do. I know what abuse looks like." The dam broke. I had not cried in front of him. I had not cried when he threatened me. I had held it all in a frozen block of terror in my chest. But her words, her simple, factual, believing words, they shattered that ice. The tears started. They were not quiet, polite tears. They were hot, silent, agonizing tears that streamed from my eye, hot and stinging, carving a path through the dried blood and grime on my face. I choked, my voice breaking into a sob. I can't say anything. You don't understand. He'll kill me." The words, my deepest, darkest secret, tumbled out of my mouth in a hoarse, terrified whisper. "He promised. He said if I ever told anyone, he would find me, and he would kill me. He will. He'll kill me." "No, he will not," Cynthia said, her voice a steel promise. She put her hand on my shoulder, her grip firm and strong. "You are in a hospital. You are safe right now. He cannot get to you here. We have security. We have protocols. We have resources. We will not let that happen. But I need you to be brave. I need you to tell the truth when the doctor asks you again." The technician waved from the door. "Cynthia, we're ready." "We're coming," she called, her voice instantly bright and professional. She looked back at me. "Be brave, Eliza," she whispered. The X-rays and the CT scan were a blur of cold tables, mechanical whirring and disembodied voices telling me to hold your breath and stay perfectly still. Every movement, every shift from the gurney to the table was a fresh agony, my broken ribs grinding, my head spinning. But the physical pain was dull. My mind was on fire racing. What if I do? What if I don't? He'll kill me. But she said I was safe. When they were finished, they wheeled me back out. But they did not take me back to the open curtained bay where I had been. They bypassed it completely. They took me down a different, quieter hallway and into a private room. A room with a real, solid wood door. This was different. This was serious. And he was there. Liam was already in the room, standing by the window. His arms crossed his face, a mask of strained, anxious concern. The second he saw me, he rushed over, but his movements were too sharp, too angry. He knew. He knew the clumsy story was weak. He knew that the sight of my torso had changed everything. "How is she?" he demanded of Cynthia, his voice sharp, no longer the weeping, terrified husband. Cynthia ignored his tone, her face a professional cool mask. "The doctor will be in shortly to discuss the results," she said calmly. She and the technician transferred me from the gurney to the bed. Cynthia checked the IV in my arm, fluffed my pillow, and then looked at me. It was a quick, supportive glance, a silent message. "Be brave." Then she left, pulling the door almost completely shut behind her, leaving just a small crack. The moment the door clicked, Liam's mask did not just slip. It vanished. He leaned in close, his face just inches from mine, his smile a terrifying thin reptilian slash. His voice was a low, venomous hiss, so quiet it was more of a vibration than a sound. "You remember what I told you?" He whispered, his eyes black and dead. "You fell down the stairs. That is all that happened. You are clumsy. You bruise easy. You say one word different. Eliza and I swear to God you know what will happen when I get you home. I will make what I did to you tonight look like a joke. I will make it look like a fucking love tap. Do you understand me?" I was paralyzed, frozen. The tiny spark of hope Cynthia had ignited was gone, suffocated by the familiar crushing weight of his terror. I was back in his control. I could only manage a tiny jerky nod. The door opened again, this time without a knock. Dr. Reed walked in. He was not alone. Cynthia was right behind him, her arms crossed, standing like a sentinel just inside the doorway. Dr. Reed was holding a tablet computer. This was it. The air in the room was so thick I could not breathe. Liam instantly snapped back into character. He grabbed my hand, his grip painfully tight, his face a perfect picture of a worried husband. "Doctor, please," he said, his voice thick with fake emotion. "Is she okay? What did you find? Is it bad?" Dr. Reed did not look at him. He did not acknowledge him. He walked directly to my side of the bed. He looked straight into my one good eye, his gaze focused and intense. He was speaking only to me. "Eliza," he said, his voice clear and firm, cutting through the thick, terrified fog in my head. "The results of your CT scan and X-rays show several extremely concerning injuries." I felt Liam's hand tighten on mine, his nails digging into my skin. A warning. Dr. Reed began to list them, and with every word he said, a micro-flashback, a tiny, violent memory exploded in my brain. "You have a severe concussion," he said. I saw it. The flash of white light as my head hit the refrigerator door. The rattling sound of the Italian magnets. "You have a displaced fracture of the nasal bone," he continued. "A broken nose." I felt it. The wet, sickening crunch of his fist. The explosive, white-hot pain. "You have 3 non-displaced fractures on your left side," he said. "Ribs 5, 6, and 7. 3 broken ribs." I heard it. The quiet, wet pop as his shoe sank into my side. The agony that stole my breath. And he paused, his eyes locking with mine, his gaze full of a quiet, terrible knowledge. "We found evidence of previous fractures, Eliza. Several on your right side and a hairline fracture in your right ulna, your wrist, all in various stages of healing, all of which have healed improperly without any medical attention." I remembered it. The agony. The time 6 months ago, he playfully wrestled me, twisting my arm behind my back until I screamed and heard something snap. I had to wear a cheap drugstore splint for weeks, hiding it under my long-sleeved shirts, telling him I sprained it falling down the back steps. Dr. Reed took a deep breath. This was the moment. He was still looking only at me. "Eliza," he said, his voice unwavering, absolute, and full of the power of the truth. "These injuries show a clear, unmistakable, and severe pattern of repeated physical trauma over an extended period of time. The bruising, the new fractures, the old healed fractures. These injuries are not consistent with a single fall down the stairs." I felt Liam's hand go slack. It did not just loosen. It went completely limp, his fingers sliding from mine. I tore my eyes away from Dr. Reed. I looked at my husband. He was frozen. Completely, utterly, catatonically frozen. All the color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, pasty gray-white. His mouth, the one that had just hissed threats at me, hung open slightly, a little O of pure, unadulterated shock. No words came out. The performer, the master manipulator, the trainer had no lines. He had no script for this. He had no lie prepared. He had no charm to fall back on. He had nothing. And in that second, that beautiful, terrifying, silent second, I realized something. He had nothing to fight against the truth. The doctor saw me. The doctor knew. He was cornered. He was trapped. And for the first time in 3 years, I was not the one who was trapped. He was. Dr. Reed was not finished. His voice was like steel, like a scalpel cutting away the last of the lies. These are clear textbook indicators of ongoing domestic violence, he said, his voice rising, filling the room. The injury patterns are unmistakable to medical professionals trained in trauma assessment. He finally turned his cold, furious gaze on Liam. I have already contacted hospital security, he said, his voice sharp and loud. And I have paged social services. I am required by law to do so. I need to speak with Eliza alone, without her husband present. The freeze broke. The shock in Liam's face instantly violently transformed into the monster I knew. Now wait just a minute, he snarled, his voice rising, that charming mask of concern completely gone, burned away by pure, unfiltered rage. You can't just... Sir, Dr. Reed cut him off, his voice a command. I am not asking. I am going to have to ask you to leave the room, immediately. She is my wife, Liam roared, his voice bouncing off the sterile walls. He took a step toward the bed, his hands clenched into fists. You can't keep me from my wife. You have no right. Actually, I can, Dr. Reed said, his voice cold and calm. He did not flinch. He did not back down. And I am. He raised his voice. Security. As if they had been waiting just outside, 2 large uniformed security guards appeared in the doorway, stepping in to block Liam's path. They were both big, solid men, and their faces were hard. Liam looked at them, then at Dr. Reed, and then at me. His eyes were black with a rage I had never seen, a homicidal, cornered animal rage. He was losing. He knew he was losing. He tried one last desperate time. He pointed at me. Eliza, he commanded, his voice a low growl. Tell them. Tell them what happened. Tell them you fell. Tell them you're clumsy. Tell them you bruise easy. Tell them. I just stared at him. My heart was a drum so loud I could hear it in my ears. But I did not speak. I did not move. I just watched him. Sir, you need to leave now, the first guard said, stepping forward. I am not leaving without my wife, Liam shouted. Sir, if you do not leave voluntarily, we will escort you out and contact the Seattle Police Department, the second guard said, his voice flat. Your choice. Liam knew he was beaten. He stared at me for one long, agonizing second. He was calculating. He was processing. And he made a decision. He would leave, but he would leave me with one final parting shot. Fine, he said, his voice a low, terrifying hiss through clenched teeth. He smoothed his shirt, a grotesque parody of his normal, charming self. I'll go. He pointed a finger at me, a trembling, furious finger. But Eliza, he said, his voice full of venom, you remember who you belong to. You remember what I told you. He looked at the guards, then back at me, his eyes promising a future of unimaginable pain. I'll be waiting for you. Right outside. I will be waiting. The 2 guards stepped in. They flanked him, one on each arm. They did not touch him, but their presence was a solid wall, forcing him to back out of the room. He never took his eyes off me. He backed out into the hallway, his face a mask of pure hatred. The door closed. Cynthia, the nurse, reached over, and I heard the lock click. He was gone. He was gone. For the first time in 3 years, I was in a room, and he was not. I was in a room, and he could not get to me. I realized I was holding my breath, my entire body rigid, my muscles clamped down in terror. I let it out. It was not a sigh. It was a long, shuddering, ragged sound that tore from my raw throat. And then I completely, totally, and utterly broke down. All the fear, all the pain, all the terror I had been swallowing and choking back for 3 long agonizing years, it came pouring out of me. It was not a quiet cry. It was not pretty. It was a guttural, heaving, animalistic sob, a sound of such profound grief and relief that it shook the entire hospital bed. My whole body convulsed with the force of it, and even though my broken ribs screamed in protest, a fresh, sharp agony with every sob, I could not stop. I could not stop crying. I was finally safe. The moment the door locked, Cynthia the nurse was at my side. She did not just stand there. She sat on the edge of the bed and she took my hand, the one Liam had been crushing. She just held it, her grip firm and warm, a silent, solid presence in the storm of my sobs. "It's okay, little one," she whispered, her voice low and kind. "It's all right. You're safe now. He is not coming back in here. You are safe." Dr. Reed pulled a chair from the corner of the room. His movements quiet, respectful. He sat down beside my bed. He did not rush me. He did not interrupt. He just waited, his hands clasped in front of him, his face a mask of professional patience while I cried. He let me get it all out, the great heaving, racking sobs of 3 years of terror. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my sobs quieted down to ragged, hitching breaths. I was exhausted, empty. Dr. Reed leaned in slightly, his voice gentle but firm. "Eliza," he said, and the simple, kind use of my name made a fresh wave of tears well up. "I need you to tell me the truth. I know it's hard, but I need you to say it. Did your husband do this to you?" I looked at him, at his focused, serious eyes. I looked at Cynthia, her face full of a strength I did not possess. I had been silent for 3 years. I had lied to my friends, to my family, to myself. The lie was my shield, but I was in a locked room, and they believed me, and finally, I said the word that set me free. "Yes," I whispered. My voice was a broken, hoarse, tiny sound, but it was the loudest word I had ever spoken. Yes, he did. It opened the floodgates. Once I said that one word, I could not stop. The entire ugly, suffocating story came pouring out of me in a frantic, desperate, jumbled rush. I told them everything. The first slap over the burnt chicken, the escalation, the daily grinding fear, the isolation from my friends, the deliberate, cruel sabotage of my career, the spilled coffee on my laptop, the terror of trying to leave the motel room and him dragging me back, the constant threats that he would kill me. I told them about the email, about the training, about the puppy. I told them everything, and they listened. They just sat there, and they listened. They believed me. Anya, the domestic violence advocate, was called in. She arrived about 30 minutes later, a woman about 45 years old with intelligent eyes and a calm, powerful presence. She sat with me while Dr. Reed and Cynthia documented my injuries for the police report. Anya explained my options, my rights, the resources that were available. She told me about restraining orders, about safe houses, about legal aid. "But he's outside," I whispered, the old familiar panic rising in my throat. I remembered his last words. "He said he's waiting for me. He meant it. You don't understand what he's capable of. He said he would kill me." Anya put her hand on my arm. Her touch was firm. "Eliza," she said, her voice soft, but full of a steel I had not heard before. "I do understand. I was sitting right where you are 15 years ago. My ex-husband put me in this very hospital. He told the doctors I was clumsy too. He told me if I ever told anyone he'd kill me." She leaned in closer. "I was terrified just like you, but I spoke up. I survived, and you will too. We will not let him get near you." A police officer arrived about 20 minutes later. Detective Kincaid. She was in her 40s with short brown hair, a no-nonsense attitude, and eyes that looked like they had seen everything and were impressed by nothing. She took my full formal statement. She was methodical patient, asking clear, direct questions. A medical photographer was called in. They photographed everything. My swollen face, my broken nose, the fingerprints on my neck, The horrible multicolored road map of bruises covering my entire torso, my back, my arms, the old poorly healed bump on my wrist. Every single mark, old and new, was documented. The medical records, the photographs, my testimony. It was a mountain of evidence. When we were finally done, Detective Kincaid looked at me. "Eliza," she said, her voice professional, but not unkind, "we have more than enough to arrest him right now. Assault and battery in the first degree at a minimum, with more charges likely to follow as we investigate. Is that what you want?" What I wanted. The question felt foreign. For 3 years, I had not been allowed to want anything. My entire existence had been a performance, a desperate, frantic dance of anticipating his wants, his needs, trying to stay one step ahead of his rage. My wants did not exist. I had not been a person. I had been a thing. Before I could answer, the door opened, and Anya stepped back in her arm around my mother. My father was right behind them, his face pale and stricken. Anya had called them. "Oh, baby," my mother sobbed, rushing to the bed. She did not grab me. She just hovered, her hands fluttering, terrified to touch me, to hurt me. "Oh, my baby girl, look at you. Look at what he did to you. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you say something?" "I couldn't," I whispered, fresh tears streaming down my face. "I was so scared, and I was so ashamed. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to think I was stupid for staying." "You are not stupid," my father said. His voice was thick, choked with an emotion I had never heard from him. He was crying. My strong, quiet father was openly weeping. "This is not your fault. None of this. He did this. He is a monster, not you." He turned to Detective Kincaid, his eyes blazing with a cold, paternal fury. "Arrest him! You arrest that bastard right now!" I looked at my mother's devastated face. I looked at my father's protective rage. I felt their love, a solid, real thing in the room, a shield I had not had in so long. I looked back at Detective Kincaid. My voice was stronger now, no longer a whisper. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I want him arrested. I want him to pay for what he did to me. I want him to never be able to hurt me or anyone else again." "Then that's what we'll do," Kincaid said, nodding once. "He's still in the hospital waiting room. He's been demanding to see you." She left the room. We sat there, my mother holding my hand, my father standing like a guard at the door. 20 minutes later, Detective Kincaid came back. "He's in custody," she said. "He was right where he promised he'd be waiting in the family lounge. He actually tried to run when he saw my partner approaching him, tried to bolt down the stairwell. So we've added evading arrest to the charges." It was a small, pathetic detail, but it made me feel a spark of grim satisfaction. The big, powerful trainer was just a coward. "We've also secured his phone," Kincaid continued. "He consented to a search, probably thought he was smart enough to have wiped it. He wasn't. We've already found texts he sent you, threats. We found messages to his friends bragging about keeping you in line. And at Eliza he had photos he'd taken of you, of your injuries after some of the beatings." I felt sick. My mother made a choked, horrified sound. "We have him, Eliza," Kincaid said. "He is not getting out." Anya stepped forward gently. "We need to talk about where you'll go when you're discharged," she said. "He knows where your parents live, Eliza. Even with an emergency protective order, which we are filing right now, it is not safe for you to go there. Desperate abusers often violate those orders. We need to get you somewhere confidential, somewhere he cannot find you." My father started to protest, but my mother stopped him. "Whatever it takes," my mother said, her eyes hard. "Whatever it takes to keep her safe." I was going to a shelter, a secret place. I was a ghost finally, but this time it would be my choice. This time it would save my life. I spent the next 8 months of my life in a place called the Genesis Shelter. It was a clean, safe, anonymous house on a street with no name hidden behind a tall fence. The address was confidential. The location was a secret. I was finally truly safe. I started therapy intensive sessions 3 times a week with a woman named Dr. Eris. She was about 50 years old with a quiet voice and an incredible strength. She was the one who finally gave a name to what I was feeling. It was not just fear or sadness. It was complex post-traumatic stress disorder. She explained that what I had experienced was not just abuse. It was systematic, calculated torture, a deliberate campaign designed to break me down and destroy my entire sense of self. "He did not just hurt you, Eliza," she told me during one of our first sessions. "He tried to erase you." In therapy, I had to unpack the word sacrifice. I had always thought of it as a noble thing. A wife sacrifices for her husband. A mother sacrifices for her family. I had sacrificed everything for my marriage. I had sacrificed my career, the one I loved, the one that gave me purpose. I had sacrificed my best friend, Chloe. I had sacrificed my family, letting them believe I was just too busy to call. I had sacrificed myself piece by piece, day by day, just to keep the peace, just to avoid an explosion. I had made myself small, then invisible, all for what I thought was love, or at least survival. And in return, I told Dr. Eris, my voice shaking with a new cold anger. I got his fists and his voice telling me I was clumsy. I am not clumsy. I was tortured. The healing was slow, agonizing. I had nightmares every single night. I would wake up screaming, my heart pounding, convinced he had found me, that he was in the room. I would flinch if someone moved too quickly near me, my body tensing for a blow. But the shelter, the other women, they understood. They were all survivors, all carrying their own invisible scars. And not one of them, not one ever asked me, "Why did you not just leave sooner?" They all knew why. I filed for an emergency divorce citing cruelty and abuse. He tried to fight it, of course. He tried to contest it from jail, tried to drag it out to maintain that one last shred of control over me. But the evidence was not my word against his. It was the mountain of medical records. It was the photographs, the official clinical horrifying photographs of my broken, bruised body. The judge looked at them for less than 5 minutes. The divorce was granted in 3 months. 6 months after that night in the hospital, the trial began. The district attorney's office had been building their case. My prosecutor was a sharp, brilliant woman named Jenna Morales, about 35 years old. She met with me multiple times, preparing me for what was to come. "He will have a lawyer, Eliza," she warned me, her voice kind but firm. "That lawyer's job is to paint you as a liar. They are going to try to discredit you. They will say you are unstable, that you are emotional, that you are a vindictive ex-wife fabricating a story. They will try to make you seem like the crazy one. Are you ready for that?" I was not. But I knew I had to be. Walking into that courthouse was the second hardest thing I had ever done. My parents were on either side of me, a human shield. Anya from the shelter was right behind us. And then I saw him. He was sitting at the defense table. He was not in an orange jumpsuit. He was in an expensive, perfectly tailored gray suit, the one I had probably picked up from the dry cleaners for him. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked handsome. He looked charming. He looked for all the world like an innocent man, a respected member of the community. He turned and he looked right at me as I walked in, and he smirked. It was just a tiny, barely perceptible curl of his lip, a look of pure, arrogant confidence. He thought he was going to win. He thought I was still his, still the terrified, broken puppy he could control. But then I sat down and I looked around. I saw my parents. I saw Chloe, who had flown in just to be there. I saw Anya. And sitting in the second row, dressed in their professional clothes, were Dr. Reed and Nurse Cynthia. They had both been subpoenaed to testify. I was not alone. He thought he still had power, but I was surrounded by my truth and by the people who had helped me find it. Jenna Morales was brilliant. She did not just present a case, she told a story backed by irrefutable scientific fact. The jury saw the photographs I had been hiding for 3 years. They saw the official medical charts, the x-rays of my broken ribs, the detailed report of my fractured nose and old healed wounds. Dr. Reed was her star witness. He sat on the stand, his face calm and authoritative, and he destroyed Liam's only defense. The pattern of injuries in various distinct stages of healing was unmistakable, he said, his voice clear, echoing in the silent courtroom. They were not, in my professional opinion, consistent with a single fall down a flight of stairs. They were, however, completely consistent with repeated systematic, long-term domestic violence. Then it was my turn. My legs felt like they were full of wet cement as I walked to the witness stand. I sat down. I swore to tell the truth, my hand shaking so hard I had to grip the railing. Jenna's voice was gentle. Eliza, during the 3 years of your marriage to the defendant, did he ever physically harm you? I looked at the jury. 12 strangers. 12 people who needed to see the truth. I took a deep breath. Yes, I said, my voice clearer and stronger than I thought possible. He hurt me almost every day for 3 years. I told them everything. The chicken parmesan, the laptop, my destroyed career, Chloe at the door, the motel, the final brutal steak dinner. I did not cry. I just told them the facts. Then his lawyer stood up, a slick man with a plastic smile. Miss Thompson, or I suppose it is Miss now, he started. 3 years is a very long time. You are an intelligent, educated woman. Why did you not just leave sooner? There it was, the question, the one everyone asks. How could I explain the paralysis to 12 strangers? How could I explain that leaving was not a single event, but a war I was not equipped to fight? My mind screamed the real answers. Because he took my keys, because he took my money, because he told me I was worthless and stupid and no one would ever want me, because he isolated me from every person I loved, because he threatened to kill me if I tried. I took a breath. I was afraid he would kill me. I said, my voice quiet but firm. He promised he would. The lawyer paced, his smile gone, replaced by a sneer. Isn't it possible, Miss Thompson, that you are simply clumsy, as your husband told the doctor? Isn't it true that these injuries were accidental? A hot, bright, clean anger surged through me. It burned away the last of my fear. How dare he? No, I said. My voice did not shake. I turned from the jury, and I looked for the first time directly at Liam. He was not smirking now. I am not clumsy. I looked back at his lawyer. He punched me, he kicked me, he strangled me, he slammed my head into a refrigerator, he broke my ribs, he broke my nose. These were not accidents. This was torture. Liam testified, of course. He sat up there, and he lied flawlessly. He said I was mentally unstable. He said I was vindictive. He said I had hurt myself and blamed him that I was angry because he had wanted a divorce. He was the charming, loving husband, and I was the crazy, hysterical wife. But when Jenna Morales cross-examined him, she did not ask about his feelings. She asked about the texts, about the photos on his phone, about his attempt to flee the hospital. And he got flustered. He got angry. He lost his temper. She was out of control, he finally yelled at Jenna. She needed to be disciplined. The jury saw it. The mask was gone. The monster was right there on the stand. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I sat in the courtroom holding my mother's hand so tightly my knuckles were white. When they came back, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. On the charge of assault and battery in the first degree, how do you find guilty? My mother let out a sob. On the charge of domestic violence with aggravated circumstances, how do you find guilty? On the charge of false imprisonment, how do you find guilty, 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 guilty? I watched his face as the verdict was read. For the first time, I saw real, genuine fear in his eyes. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The judge allowed me to give a victim impact statement. I had written it carefully. I stood at the podium, not in front of him, but in front of the judge. Your Honor, my name is Eliza, I said, my hands shaking on the paper. And Liam Walker stole 3 years of my life. He did not just hurt me physically, though the scars from that will never fully fade. He destroyed my self-worth. He made me believe I was worthless, that I deserved the abuse. I took a deep breath. I sacrificed everything for my marriage. I sacrificed the career I loved, the career he sabotaged to take care of him. I sacrificed my friends. I became a ghost in my own home just to keep the peace, but I survived. I looked down at my prepared statement, and then I put the paper down on the podium. I looked over at the defense table. I looked right at him. You tried to train me. I said, my voice strong, echoing in the silent room. "You called me a puppy. You tried to discipline me. You tried to break me." I leaned forward. "But I am still here, and you are in a cage." The judge sentenced him to 15 years in state prison. He would not be eligible for parole for 10 years. The judge also issued a permanent lifetime restraining order. As they led him away in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled his face gray and slack. He looked at me one last time. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. I did not look away. I did not flinch. I stared right back at him, my head held high until the door closed behind him. He knew he had lost. I had won. After the sentencing, my life slowly began to return. Not to what it was, but to a new normal. The Eliza. I was the 23-year-old girl who believed in fairy tales. She was gone. She died in that house somewhere between the burnt chicken and the bloody steak. But a new Eliza emerged from that hospital room. She is stronger. She is a survivor. She is more resilient. 2 years have passed since that night. I moved out of the Genesis shelter after 8 months. I did not just move across town. I moved to an entirely new city, a place where he had never been, where no one knew my story. I legally changed my last name. Not back to my maiden name, but to a new name, one I chose for myself, a name that was entirely mine, untethered from him. I went back to teaching. I stand in front of a classroom of bright, noisy, wonderful third graders, and I feel whole. When I stand in front of them, I am not a victim. I am their teacher. Liam took my career from me once. He will never take it again. I still see Dr. Eris every other week. Healing is not a straight line. There are still bad days, still nightmares. But now I also volunteer at the local shelter. I share my story. I help other women plan their escape. My pain, my survival, it all meant something. It can help save lives. He is still in prison. I know because I signed up for the victim notification system. I will get an alert if he is ever transferred or when he is up for parole in 8 more years. But I am not afraid anymore. Not like I was. I survived. If you are watching this, if you are in a situation like mine, please listen to me. You do not deserve it. It is not your fault. You are not clumsy or stupid or crazy. You are being abused. I know how terrifying it is to speak up, how impossible it seems to leave. But there is a way out. There are people, strangers, who are waiting to help you. And if you are on the outside, if you are the friend, the sister, the coworker, and you suspect something is wrong, please do not look away. Do not accept the excuses about being clumsy or falling down the stairs. Do not believe the easy lies. Ask the hard questions. Be that safe space. You might be the person who makes the difference. Be someone's Dr. Reed. Be someone's Nurse Cynthia. You might just save a life. If you are in immediate danger, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START to 88788. They are free, confidential, and available 24/7. They can help you. That doctor, Dr. Reed, he saved my life. He did not just heal my broken bones. He saved my life by refusing to accept a lie, by choosing to see the truth. That Nurse Cynthia, she gave me the courage to speak it. And that truth, the one I had been too terrified to even whisper it, set me free. Thank you for listening. The quiet strength of a woman who has sacrificed for her family is profound, but this strength should never be exploited. For years, I believed my sacrifice, my career, my joy, my very self was a testament to my love and my role as a wife. I learned in the sterile light of a hospital room that true strength isn't enduring abuse. It's reclaiming the life you set aside. The greatest revenge against a man who breaks you down is not anger, but the quiet, dignified process of rebuilding the world he tried to destroy. You are worth more than your sacrifice.